yeah. Hey, it's me, Aaron. Hi. We're going to do some virtual youth group right now. You're going to watch this video. We're going to talk about the mission project that we're doing right now, sending cards to elderly people in the nursing homes and shut-ins. We're going to talk about the first chapter of When Christians Get It Wrong, which was what we would be doing anyway in youth group. I'm going to send out questions, discussion questions, and things like that, and also like a Google form to get your information if you want to help with our card send out thing that we're doing. I'll send you that Google link in our discussion groups, and you can fill it out with like your address so we can deliver cards to you, so that way you can write them out to certain people and mail it yourself and it will get to them. I plan on having some people help me address cards, and then having people help me distribute that to your mailbox, and then you guys would write it, and then you send it out yourself, like I said. There will be a stamp on the envelope, and we'll start spreading some joy in this really weird time. That's kind of the plan for that mission card project. So look out for that Google form. Let's get right into this When Christians Get It Wrong study book. Like I said, we would be doing this anyway right now. Chapter 1 is all about when Christians are unchristian. And the first thing I want to say is that Adam Hamilton wrote this, and he prefaced a lot of this with the study and documenting of the book Unchristian, which we looked at, 3 weeks ago? So we're kind of building on that and carrying forth there. The first chapter is When Christians Are Unchristian. He talks about that 2007 book, Unchristian, and then he's discussing some experiences that he heard from youth whenever they were recruited to be in youth or whatever. And both of these stories that he tells in the book are about the hypocrisy there. Like they're so hypocritical, and they talk about how, this first boy says, it didn't start off badly. The rides at the park were fun for this big bring a friend to youth group day. And hanging out with some of them was a good time, but during the long ride back to the church, they started talking about people. They discussed who was having sex, who was smoking pot, who was gay. The more they talked, the worse things were. Many of them knew that I were friends with the people they were talking about, and they didn't care. Finally, they got onto the subject of who was going to hell. It seems that if you didn't go to their brand of church, you didn't stand a chance of getting into heaven. The other girl said something similar. I'm thinking of the Christians in my school that I see every day. They judge everyone constantly. It's annoying, and a lot of people don't really like it or like them because of it. I have a really good friend who claims to be a really hardcore Christian, but he smokes pot all the time and drinks and does all these things and lies, and it doesn't act Christian at all to me. So you can see, like, those are just two examples of the people being hypocritical, right? We're going to get into what Jesus is talking about here and dealing with these hypocrites in the Christian faith. Jesus confronted the same kinds of things in this day. If you read the Gospels carefully, Jesus never got angry with prostitutes, adulterers, ordinary sinners, the outcasts of society. The only people Jesus had words of judgment for in the Gospels were the religious people. What angered him the most, especially the religious leaders, was their judgmentalism, their hypocrisy, and their failure to love, right? And you can see that even in some of today's churches. The truth is, we're all in danger of being pretenders when it comes to our highest values and aspirations, right? Like, we all have times whenever somebody could say, well, you're not acting very Christian right now, right? You can think of that. It's going to be one of our discussion questions. There are ways that we look at how the unchristian Christian behaves. The four things that were mentioned: wrong motives, judging others, majoring in the minors, we'll talk about that means, and being two-faced. Having the wrong motives is the first one. Jesus was talking to his followers. He warned about the dangers of praying, fasting, and helping the poor for the wrong reasons. He talked about people who would pray on the street corners, blow a loud trumpet when they were about to give to a needy person, make sure everyone saw them fasting, and so others would know how religious they were. Does that sound like some of us, some Christians you may know, or people you see, or even how you behave sometimes, right? Look at me, I'm being Christian. Look at me, I love Jesus, and you don't, and you can see how awesome I am. That's not the reason, right? That's not what we're called to do as Christians. Second is pointing out sins where others, without seeing our own sin. Adam Hamilton talks about Matthew 7, verses 1 through 5 in this. And 3 through 5 says, "Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye?" You've heard this before, maybe. Or how can you say to your neighbor, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," while the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take out the log of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye, right? What you talking about whenever you're being bad too? Don't be talking about people if you're being, well, don't be talking about people ever, right? But if you're being just as bad or worse, it's real clear that you are not the right kind of Christian. You're not behaving in the right way. The third one is majoring in the minors, meaning you put too much focus on one thing and you're forgetting about the other parts of being Christian, right? Like Jesus talks about a few days before he's crucified, he sternly rebuked the Pharisees. He reminded the Pharisees that it was well and good to tithe, and they tithed the clippings of their herb plants and contributed that. But you forget about the important things like justice and mercy towards your neighbor and love. You know, Jesus was all about love. Ever heard of it? Being two-faced is the fourth one. We all know what being two-faced is, right? You say one thing to one person and you're being nice, and then you turn around and talk bad about them, or you behave differently with one group of friends than with another, right? In Matthew 23, verses 25 to 26, Jesus says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup so that the outside may become clean," right? The inside and the outside. That way you're not acting one way but behaving another. All right? All this is about, you know, being a hypocrite. Adam Hamilton points out in the book that we are all recovering Pharisees, right? We all have these problems. There is no perfect human. And how then do we get it right? Right? Well, we have to remember at the very end of the chapter, he says, when Christians get it right, we love and give, work for justice, and demonstrate kindness. When Christians get it right, we, like Jesus, befriend those who are outside the church rather than condemning them. And when we Christians get it right, people are drawn to rather than repelled by our faith. If we show how we love, if we show how we are kind and what we are doing to work for justice, then it should be something that people want to be a part of, right? And that's not even, again, that's not even like the reason why you do it, right? If you are being true to yourself and being a true Christian and being a true follower, then the fact that other people want to join you is just a second positive, right? But the first thing is that you are involved in a loving Christian God that loves you and sees you for who you are, which is a kind, loving person, right? Oh, that was confusing. So that's basically the first chapter, right? So we need to remember when we are in any situation that we are being a good Christian person, that we are following Jesus' teaching, not being judgmental, not talking about others. We hear that and see that constantly, right? I hear it and see it in our own youth group, right? So those are things that we need to look at going on. Chapter 2 next week. Christian, ooh, look, here you can really read it. It's backwards. Christians, science, and politics. That'll be fun, right? Especially with what's going on right now in the world. I just wanted, before we stop here, I just want to take a second to remind you that you have my phone number, and if you need to talk to me about anything, if you're stressed out, if you're stressing, if you need help with figuring out how you're going to do schoolwork from home and all that kind of stuff, or anything like that, just talk to me, let me know what's going on, and we'll do that. Before we sign off, I just want to say, remember, I'm going to be texting you all in the next few hours about discussion group stuff, and then also with the Google form about how to sign up and serve for the elderly card mission thing. That's not a good title. For the cards to people who are old. Yep. Okay. So before we stop, let's pray. Loving God, help us remember to be motivated by the right things. Help us to see when we are being unchristian, and help us find the space in our heart and mind to turn off those bad character traits and turn on the loving ones. Be with all of the people affected by happenings in our world right now. Those infected, the first responders, healthcare workers, scientists fighting to find an immunity or cure, people who work in necessary services, people stuck at home. Help us to find peace and your calming presence in these uncertain times, as we all have moments of anxiety and fear, but we know that you and your hands on earth will help us overcome anything. Amen. Okay, well, that's it for this week. If you made it to this far, good job. Woo! Thanks for listening. And let me know if you like this format or if you want to do something else. Remember, this is your youth group as much as it is mine, so we'll figure out things along the way. But for right now, I look forward to talking to you about Chapter 1 and figuring out some card stuff. All right, bye. Thanks for being part of Wesley Youth Group.